Have you guys been seeing the Sheryl Swoopes / Nancy Lieberman feud that's been going on, apparently it's been going on the past few days regarding Caitlin Clark? Well, I have my thoughts. First of all, both women, and I do mean both women, are dead ass wrong. I'm gonna highlight Sheryl Swoopes right quick. First of all, Sheryl, I am a big fan, always will be a big fan of yours, but your comments on Caitlin Clark are just factually incorrect. They just are. All you gotta do is do a quick Google search on what you've been espousing, and you'll find out how dead ass wrong you are. As far as Nancy Lieberman goes, also a big fan of hers, legend of the game, all that good stuff. Why would you go on a national syndicated radio show to air out the personal conversation you had with Sheryl, where you disagree with what she said about Caitlin Clark? Why would you do that? That's just messy. Just messy and
The tension between basketball legends reached a boiling point when Sheryl, a trailblazer in women's basketball and a 3-time WNBA MVP, publicly called out Nancy Lieberman, a Hall of Famer and pioneer of the sport, following comments Lieberman made after the controversy between Sheryl and rising star Caitlin Clark.
Without Sheryl Swoopes in my life, I'd rather have her in it. So she kind of extended a little bit of olive branch. She's like, look, just come back to me. Whether you come back or not, I'm going to be me, I'm going to be great. But, I missed a friendship. I understand it. Swoopes said, Swoopes, who's been feuding with Smith over the Clark discourse, responded to Lieberman and said...
On a recent episode of The Stephen A. Smith Show, Nancy opened up about the strain in her friendship with Sheryl, which stemmed from a disagreement over comments Sheryl made about Caitlin. She has known Caitlin since her college days and even coached her, felt compelled to address these comments publicly.
And I had to get on, somebody we both have incredible respect for in Sheryl Swoopes. You're a champion on every level, one of the greatest players in WNBA history. Because I said, how do you mention the Indiana Fever and all of these other players and you don't mention Caitlin Clark? And then all of a sudden she gets on me and calls me a coward and all of this other stuff. I don't know what you can say about Sheryl Swoopes, but if there's anything that you could say, what would you want to say in terms of the narrative that has been put out there as it pertains to her coverage and her feelings about Caitlin Clark?
I've known Sheryl since she was in college. I helped do her shoe deal with Nike in 1993, took her to her first SBs. I've known Sheryl, I've coached her, have a lot of respect for her.
She said that she reached out to Sheryl to correct the statistics and emphasize the importance of factual accuracy. However, this conversation did not go as planned, leading to a significant rift between the two basketball legends. Lieberman expressed her disappointment, noting that she had attempted to reconcile with Sheryl during the Final Four, but Sheryl was not receptive.
I called her when Caitlin was still playing at Iowa and she had just broken Maravich's record. And it was all over the place, as you and I have discussed, that there was this quote by Sheryl that said, Caitlin was, 25 years old. She was, 24 years old. She was a fifth-year senior. Right. She was taking 40 shots a game. Her records were illegitimate. And I got off the treadmill and I called her as a friend. And I said, you can say whatever you want. You can have your own opinion about anybody. But you do have to get the statistics right. I mean, facts matter. And if you just get ahead of this and just say, hey, I made a mistake on my numbers, then this thing is over and everybody respects you for your opinion. You might like Boston, I might like the Yankees. It's okay to have difference of opinions. Well, she got upset with me on the phone and I was like, Sheryl, I'm not doing anything to hurt you. I'm just sharing, we're talking. And so our relationship it pretty much is not happening at this point. I tried to talk to her at the Final Four. Right. She didn't want to talk to me. My life's going to be good or great with or without Sheryl Swoopes in my life. I'd rather have her in it.
Lieberman concluded by stating that while she respects Sheryl, their relationship is currently fractured. She emphasized that differing opinions are acceptable, but it is crucial to base them on accurate facts.
Right.
The difference is when the Kennedy Carter thing happened, And I'm doing Michelle Beadle's podcast with Lou Williams and Chandler Parsons. And Michelle says to me, Nancy, what would you tell Caitlin Clark in that situation? And I said to Michelle, look, I'm not here to speak for Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, I'm not going to tell you that. Then she said, what would you do if somebody kind of blindsided you like that? And you know me, I'm straight from New York, straight from Rucker Park. I said, I would have
Yes.
gotten up. I would have walked up to whoever did that to me. I would have punched him in the face, and the expletive that I used. And I would have said,
Yes.
F off. That is who I am.
In response, Sheryl took to social media, acknowledging Lieberman's intentions, but indicating that she was content without her in her life. This incident underscores how professional disagreements can deeply affect personal relationships, even among sports icons.
Sheryl Swoopes, basically to say you need to get ahead of this. You need to publicly just mention that you got some like stats wrong for Caitlin Clark, and people will forget about it. And Sheryl Swoopes got angry on the phone and hasn't spoken to her since. And she said, now here you go. I get what you're trying to do with your boy Stephen A. Smith, but it ain't working. You know good and well what happened, and ditto. My life is good without you two and him. You want to go there. Like, Stephen A. Smith, again, decided to triple down on his criticism of Sheryl Swoopes. And bring on Nancy Lieberman, who is a legend of a comparable level to Sheryl Swoopes as well. So you can't even say that, he's going at a legend. Nancy is a legend of a comparable level. Probably not maybe as known as Sheryl Swoopes, but a legend of a comparable level.
It all started when Sheryl made a comment about Caitlin breaking records, suggesting that Caitlin's achievements were inflated because she was a fifth-year senior and took an excessive number of shots per game.
Context, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's somehow worse. Now, the first comment that actually sparked this did not start in the beginning of this season. It actually started last year when Caitlin Clark broke the all-time record for the most points in a tournament in college that was previously held by Sheryl Swoopes.
I set the record in 5 games, right?
Yeah.
Because back then, we had a first-round bye.
Oh,
so
okay.
we didn't get to play, I didn't get that 6 games. So I set the record in 5 games.
Yeah.
So to me, yes, she broke the record, but she did it in 6 games.
It took her extra game.
Well, I'm just saying.
You can say that.
No, listen. If I have 6 games,
The record's different.
well, I'm gonna have another 30 to the 177,
you were
Jordan.
averaging, what was it, 34?
30, yeah.
30 well,
30 something. 30 something. How about that? I mean, we're having a good time. We're having fun. But I don't really care what the record is, who has the record.
Sheryl recently shared her thoughts on Caitlin during an episode of her Queens of the Court podcast. Sheryl mentioned that she believes the Indiana Fever, Caitlin's team, could still make the playoffs even without her. This opinion sparked quite a bit of controversy, as many fans and analysts see Caitlin as a pivotal player for the team.
I do believe it's still important to highlight this because the same logic that she utilized in this response, for whatever reason, was utilized during the Gilbert Arenas podcast when it wasn't factually correct.
If you're going to break a record, to me, if it's legitimate, you have to break that record in the same amount of time that that player set it.
Okay.
Right? So if Kelsey Plum set that record in 4 years, well, Caitlin should have broke that record in 4 years. But because there's a COVID year and then there's another year, you know what I mean? So she's already had an extra year to break that record. So is it truly a broken record? Caitlin Clark right now probably takes about 40 shots a game.
Here we go.
Stephen A. Smith is known for his outspoken and passionate opinions, and he didn't hold back when discussing Caitlin. He strongly defended her, stating that those who criticize or doubt her abilities are insane. Smith emphasized Caitlin's exceptional talent and impact on the game, highlighting how crucial she is for her team and the sport in general.
How that makes you look. You have any idea how that serves to stain any kind of critique of Caitlin Clark, because that gives fodder to those who believe she's being hated on and ostracized to some degree? Do you realize that Sheryl Swoopes, you're insane to do that? Let me tell you why you're insane to do that. Because Sheryl Swoopes, you're one of the greatest players ever in the history of basketball. That's why.
Dana Loesch, a conservative commentator known for her outspoken views, recently voiced strong support for Caitlyn amidst ongoing criticism of the young athlete's fiery demeanor and on-court confidence. Loesch took to social media to defend Caitlyn, stating emphatically that Caitlyn is not a bitch.
You spend all this time trying to get respect for your league, and then you do bitch stuff. The only B's out there I see are the B's that are being dramatic about Caitlin Clark. That's all I see. They try so long to get respect for women's basketball, and then they treat it like a junior high school girl's locker room. Junior high school girl antics on the court. Instead of playing the game, they gotta be drama because they're jealous. Instead of letting their skills speak for themselves, they gotta be drama because they're jealous. Now, what little girl wants to grow up and play in a league where you're targeted like that? How do you sit here and profess and demand that everyone take women's sports seriously when you can't even take it seriously enough to not act like a junior high queen on the court? It's stupid. That's so dumb. It looks like a soap opera.
There has been some speculation that Sheryl harbors negative feelings towards Caitlyn. This perception was fueled by an incident during a recent broadcast where Sheryl remained silent while her co-broadcaster praised Caitlyn.
Staying silent while her co-broadcaster was talking about Caitlin Clark winning Player of the Week.
Check the players of the week. Both of them had outstanding weeks, and they're the next two opponents of the week. Caitlin Clark will be here on Sunday for the week, averaged 25, and Avisa Collier averaged over 25. Of course, the Lynx here Friday at 6:30 on Ion. And then the Fever come here at 3 o'clock before a sellout crowd. Tough stretch for Dallas. Coming into the second half of the season, they had the hardest remaining schedule. Enrique pulls it away. 4 rebounds for Enrique. Satu was the floor.
So when I first saw this video, I actually wanted to come to her defense because a lot of times during the broadcast, there are different reads that the broadcasters have to call out. So this was probably one of them. Maybe it was assigned to her.
The moment occurred when Caitlyn was being recognized for her impressive performance, but Sheryl did not contribute to the discussion, leading some to believe she intentionally avoided speaking about Caitlyn. This silence has sparked debate among fans and analysts, with some interpreting it as a sign of disdain.
Broadcaster. However, so much of the time, the other broadcaster is allowed to kind of ad-lib or jump in at any point. And so the fact that he went on about the read, talked about Nafisa, talked about Caitlin Clark, and then after that, there was like 5 or 6 seconds of literal silence because Sheryl Swoopes was not jumping in. That was the point that I was like, okay, here's once again another example of Sheryl Swoopes hating Caitlin Clark so much that she literally can't even say her name. It's like Caitlin Clark is the Voldemort if Sheryl Swoopes was Harry Potter. Like literally cannot say Caitlin Clark's name. It is so bizarre and so weird.
Sheryl's discriminative behavior toward Caitlyn was obvious when she has been quite vocal about her opinions on the Indiana Fever players, except for Caitlyn. Sheryl has praised players like Aaliyah Boston, Kelsey Mitchell, and Lexi Hull for their contributions to the team's success. However, she has notably refrained from giving Caitlyn any credit, which has sparked some controversy.
Her and her co-host were talking about the Indiana Fever post the Olympic break, and here's what she had to say about the Fever. I think the Olympic break really helped Indiana. I'm going to shout out to Lexi Hull. I'm a big Lexi Hull fan. Lexi Hull shot the leather off the ball in their game against Seattle. Kelsey Mitchell is just stroking. She is just shooting the basketball. Aaliyah Boston, almost a triple-double. If Indiana continues to play the way they're playing like this, they too are going to move up in the standings. And that was it, you guys. That was all she had to say about Indiana. It doesn't even make any sense. Like, not even a nod to Caitlin Clark, not even saying like Caitlin Clark's playing well or Caitlin Clark's leading the team. You don't even have to be that complimentary, but leaving her out completely when she is the #1 component of that Indiana Fever team and has also been playing a lot better post this Olympic break than she was before, to completely leave her out, it's so.
This has led to some heated exchanges, including one with Stephen A. Smith, who criticized Sheryl for not acknowledging Caitlyn's impact.
The story, you guys, Stephen A. Smith actually called out Sheryl Swoopes on his Stephen A. Smith show, specifically talking about this clip in the podcast where she just completely omitted Caitlin Clark's name. He was basically talking about how she continues to hate on Caitlin Clark, and it's basically pushing the narrative that the media and other players in the WNBA and people in general are just hating on Caitlin Clark when there seems to be no reason why. So when you start to try to figure out the reasoning, all you can think of is maybe they're jealous, maybe they think it should have been them, that maybe they don't like how much praise Caitlin Clark is getting. It doesn't make sense. So he called her out on her show and said, essentially, like, you're employed by the WNBA. Everything that you're doing is around the WNBA. It's not a good look. And it's especially not a good look because you are a legendary player yourself.
Did you guys know that 17% of the WNBA's flagrant fouls were committed against Caitlin Clark? And the Chicago Sky committed 80% of those. No surprise here. People hate her on and off the court. But get this, Sheryl Swoopes was purposely left off this broadcast because of her disdain and hate for Caitlin Clark. A grown-ass woman hating on a WNBA rookie so much, a woman that she doesn't even know, and you're surprised that you're left off the broadcast? Sheryl Swoopes can't even give credit where credit is due. She went on a podcast and she was praising the Fever for how they turned around their season. But who's the one person that she failed to mention as being a part of that? Yep, Caitlin Clark. She has been criticizing her all season, not one positive comment.
Despite the backlash, Sheryl has stood by her comments, emphasizing her personal relationships with the other players.
Sheryl Swoopes was discussing the Indiana Fever on a podcast.
Okay.
And she was like, in the Fever, they've just been tremendous. And she started naming players. And she named like every player except Caitlin Clark. Okay. She wouldn't mention her name.
Yeah. True hater. Yeah.
Like real hater. So Stephen A. Smith called her out on it.
Uh-oh.
Stephen A. Smith was like, Sheryl Swoopes, like, you have to know it's crazy for you to discuss the Indiana Fever without mentioning Caitlin Clark.
Mm-hmm.
And when you don't mention Caitlin Clark, it is so clear that you're doing it intentionally because you're a real hater. He said, Sheryl Swoopes, you know more about basketball than me. You know more about basketball than most men. You know the reason the Indiana Fever have turned things around. Sure, everybody played a role, I guess. But like the centerpiece of the whole thing is Caitlin Clark. And you went out of your way not to even mention her name. You're a real hater. That's what he said. And Sheryl Swoopes, she popped up. She said, you can talk about whatever you want to talk about on your podcast. I'll talk about whatever I want to talk about on my podcast. And if you want to talk to my face, then talk to my face.
Sheryl has shared her thoughts on Angel Reese and Caitlin as they make their mark in the WNBA. Sheryl praised Angel Reese for her tenacity and hustle plays, highlighting her impressive rebounding skills and consistent hard work on the court. Regarding Caitlin, Sheryl acknowledged the challenges any rookie faces in the WNBA, emphasizing that it's tough for first-year players to dominate immediately due to the high skill level and competition.
I think Angel will eventually be a good pro. I don't think Angel will come into the league immediately and dominate the way people think she will. And I say that for people who have never watched a WNBA game. It's good. Like there's talent, like these women can play. And because there are very few roster spots, like it's a real job. So people look at new players coming in, whether that's out of college, players who've been overseas, and they look at that and say, oh, you trying to come take my job. Like, nah, it's not gonna be that easy. So will Caitlin Clark be a good pro? Absolutely. Will Caitlin Clark come into the WNBA and do what she's doing right now? Immediately? Absolutely not. Not gonna happen.
Okay. Not on the right team?
Charles Barkley recently commented on what he perceives as petty jealousy among WNBA players towards Caitlin, a rookie with the Indiana Fever. Barkley criticized some players for not fully supporting Caitlin, despite the attention and revenues she brings to the league. He emphasized that Caitlin's presence has significantly benefited the WNBA, including increased visibility and financial gain.
You ever think you'd be on Inside the NBA talking about the WNBA protecting somebody from violence?
No, I thought like, man, these girls getting ready to hit the lottery. I mean, this is a great time to be a woman in the WNBA. Caitlin, I mean, what she's done for the game the last couple of years, she is a shining star. I didn't think she was going to have to worry about all this petty nonsense that's going on. And it's really unfortunate because she's bringing so much notoriety to the game. I watched more college basketball in the last 2 years, women-wise, I have my entire life. They act like she didn't earn it. They're like, well, she's only getting this shine because she's white. Is race a factor? Yes, race is a factor, but her resume speaks for itself. She just set the record for the most points ever scored. They didn't prop her up just because she was white. Her accolades speak for themselves. And because she's getting endorsements and people are coming to see her, we got this petty jealousness going on, and it's really unfortunate.
Caitlin finds herself at the center of a growing controversy as her confident on-court demeanor draws both praise and criticism. Stuck between support from figures Nancy Lieberman and criticism from traditionalists. Nancy said in a recent interview that they are eventually going to face the comparison between players of different generations, but they cannot blame someone for doing their job.
It's better. You know, you're going to have that. That's just what sports is. But we shouldn't hate on somebody who's actually doing her job. And she's doing it really well and exceeding expectation. And a lot of these young players in the league, that's why the W is so appealing.
The controversy around Caitlin spotlights the double standards women athletes face for showing confidence. As figures like Nancy defend her, it's clear there's a growing call to shift perceptions and celebrate, rather than criticize, the boldness and talent of female athletes. That's it for today's video. Stay tuned until next time.